Wavelength.
Just because we're doing our lectures online doesn't mean that we need to then retreat and make life, all about being alone.
Sparking the convos about Adelaide.
I think there's not enough knowledge around the severity of the long-term impacts that a concussion can give you, and it's not really educated enough.
You should be having.
The minimum job search requirements is definitely problematic, and it is up to a computer to decide whether you receive your payments each month.
This is Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Hello friends, welcome back to Wavelength. Sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. Tonight I'm joined by the always gorgeous Ella in the studio with me tonight. Hello.
Hello, great to be back.
Before we jump in, we do need to acknowledge that we're recording Wavelength on the land of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains and pay respect to elders past and present.
We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationship with the land. We acknowledge that they are of continuing importance to the Kaurna people living today. We also extend the respect to other Aboriginal language groups and other First Nations. Shall we jump into the episode? Tonight on the show, we talk to See Differently about their initiative about giving veterans service animals.
Yeah, that's going to be a good one. And later on, Ella, you were speaking about the census. And even after that, Wavelength Explains, Liz is taking you through gambling in South Australia.
Yes, but right now we talk about bread tags being made into wheelchairs with Jenny Cooper.
Take it away, Trevor.
Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
How did you start this charity and how does it help?
Well, Bread Tags for Wheelchairs started in South Africa in 2006. And so I was I'm from South Africa and I was taking bread tags back to help them and got to know the people there a bit. And so they asked if I could start something here. And we've been going since 2018. And yes, I started small here, but the response from Australians was absolutely amazing. And we're up to recycling 250 kilos a month now. So it's gone from zero to that.
How do you find the bread tags?
Well, it's really spread by word of mouth a lot and through Facebook. And so initially I just set up a Facebook page, and I did have a list of contacts from the South African people that they had given me, of people who'd expressed interest. But it's really just spread by word of mouth. So we have a huge number of schools, childcare centres. The public have just become very much aware of it, and we've got a network of collection points all around Australia. So we're a national charity, and anybody that collects bread tags can just look on our website and find a collection point close to them or post them to us. So that's how they get to us. Yeah, I think it's become popular both from an environmental point of view, social justice point of view, and also educationally within schools and childcare centres. They've been very keen to support it and take it on board.
How many bread tags does it take to raise one wheelchair?
It takes about 250 kilos, so quite a lot. And of course, we don't make the wheelchairs from bread tags, which a lot of people think. We send the bread tags to a recycler who's in Robe called Transmutation, and they are a business that makes bowls and boards and pens from them, and they donate to us for the bread tags we give them, and we send the money to South Africa and fund the wheelchairs.
Have you won any awards, and if so, what for?
We're very thrilled this year. We won the South Australian Environment Award in the Working Together category, which is for not-for-profits. So that was really a wonderful recognition.
What's your end goal for this year or next year?
Well, I guess with the bread tag ban having been introduced plastic bread tag ban being introduced in South Australia in the 1st of September, our quantities are going to tail off, although it seems that people do hoard quite a lot of bread tags, and we are national, so we're still getting them from other states, although cardboard is being introduced throughout Australia. So we don't really have fixed goals, but so far we've recycled over 13 tonnes of bread tags, and we've provided 110 wheelchairs. So I guess it's just as many as we can, really. So we'll continue as long as we're getting bread tags in, and we'll probably just tail off slowly. So we don't really have a fixed goal, just we want as many bread tags as we can get so that we can fund as many wheelchairs as we can. Oh, I just think, the amazing thing about we've been going for 6 years now, and it's just this massive community effort, really. So we've got people in their homes collecting maybe very few bread tags from one home, but they pass them on and they get amassed. We've got wonderful transport partners that transport them all to Adelaide from us. We've got this team of colour sorters that sort the bread tags because the craft objects that are made need the colours separate. And, so apart from our leadership team, we've got, must be hundreds of thousands of people making some kind of a contribution.
Sparking the combos about Adelaide you should be having. Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Thanks for that, Trevor.
Wavelength.
Welcome back to Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. There have been chats in the news about the census and inclusivity and what that means.
To understand a little better, I'm speaking to Xavier Mills from Swinburne University of Technology.
Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Could you please give a brief overview on what the Labor government's initial election promise was?
In 2021, there was a lot of backlash after that census because the government failed to ask any relevant questions about gender, sexuality or intersex characteristics. And then in 2023, the Labor government made a promise that they would ask those questions and that they would follow the Australian Bureau of Statistics best practice guidelines, which are outlined in the Standard for Sex, Gender, variations of sex characteristics and sexual orientation variables, but essentially it just outlines how to ask questions about sex, gender, sex characteristics and sexual orientation.
What was the government's reasoning for going back on this promise in the last few weeks?
To be honest, a bit confusing. It's been very back and forth. So initially they made an announcement over the weekend, but they didn't do a very public announcement and it kind of happened under the radar. There was actually no relevant reason why until Richard Miles said that it was because they were trying to protect the queer community or the LGBTQIA plus community and kind of framed it in a way that they were trying to protect our community from backlash, which caused a lot of outrage. Two reasons. First of all, it's very paternalistic, but also it's like this decision actually causes more backlash, especially from other people who are against asking these questions in the census.
How did community groups react to this decision?
The reaction was overwhelmingly one-sided on LGBTQIA plus groups. It's not really up for debate, I would argue, in queer communities. Everyone wants the same thing, which is for there to be a question about gender, a question about sex, sexual orientation, and also intersex status. Equality Australia started the #Count Us in 2026 campaign, and when I looked at the beginning of September, there was 16,000 signatures on there. Most queer organisations released statements saying that they were also on that side of wanting these questions asked. People and organisations were overwhelmingly quite angry and frustrated and feeling quite undermined because of all the work that had been done since the 2021 census.
Could you just explain why this is important to be asking these questions?
There's lots of different reasons why. I think I've kind of got three main points. First of all, it's exclusionary. Something that a lot of people might not realise, it's not just actually what questions are asked, but actually what happens after we collect that data. So, for example, in the 2021 census, there actually was a question and it was slightly ambiguous and confusing. It was in a section that never actually explicitly stated if it was about sex or gender, but it was asking respondents to fill out if they were male or female. And that has always been the way the question was structured, but in 2021 they also added in non-binary sex as an option. This caused confusion for many reasons. First of all, that non-binary is typically a term used to describe non-binary gender, not non-binary sex. But I think what I have a few issues with is what happens afterwards. After that data was collected, subsequently the government and the ABS likewise abandoned that data. For example, there was 43,220 people in the 2021 census that selected non-binary sex. All of those people were automatically reallocated into male or female, even though they didn't select male or female. Then the ones that did select non-binary and a gender of male or female together, they were then reallocated into the male or female option only. I think that has been something that I feel is quite problematic in terms of when I say these practices are exclusionary, I'm talking about not only what happens before and what questions are asked, but also what happens afterwards. So also the census is supposed to, as it outlines on the ABS website, is supposed to create a snapshot of our community, which doesn't get done when we don't ask relevant questions about who we are as a community. And so, the government really wants to know this sort of stuff about who we are as a nation, but then fails to ask questions about sex, gender and sexuality, and also intersex status. Not only is it exclusionary, but it's also kind of bad public policy. I feel like this kind of gets thrown around quite a bit, it's bad public policy, but I guess just to name a few, how asking these questions might inform policy. We know that LGBTQIA plus people experience higher rates of mental health issues, but if we don't know where these people are living, then we can't actually provide those services.
Sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Wow, thanks for that, Ella and Xavier. That was very insightful.
Wavelength.
Just before the break, we spoke to Xavier Mills about the census. Now, Cass, you are speaking with Raphael and Sophie Slattery about See Differently.
Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
See Differently is a not-for-profit and charity, and we've been running for 140 years, helping people with low vision, but also veterans with assistance dogs as well.
And I'm Sophie, and I'm an assistance dog instructor at See Differently, and I have the pleasure of working with veterans and with clients on their assistance dog journey.
What are the major challenges that vision impaired individuals face on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so obviously there are some really practical challenges that people with low vision and blindness face on a daily basis. So, just some of the things that we might take for granted, like going to work or going down to the local shops and picking up a few ingredients. They're all absolutely achievable, but sometimes those things can just take a little bit of extra time, or there's a requirement for some technology or for some assistance to be able to do those things, or to do them in a different way. Yeah, that's the daily sorts of challenges. Some of the other more unfortunate challenges are obviously just around, how people in society behave and how people are around people with disabilities. One of the things that our low vision clients, and even clients who have a guide dog, will often say to us is, people will say things like, "Oh, you don't look blind," or "I thought you looked at me." So there's still a lot of, I suppose, people just not understanding that low vision and blindness is a spectrum. And look, even people with a guide dog might have a very tiny amount of, most people don't have absolutely zero vision. So, having a bit more, I suppose, kindness and tolerance in society is always something that we're striving towards.
A massive part of See Differently is your various assistant dog programs. Could you please explain a little on what these are?
Yeah, of course. We have a guide dog program, which Sally's just spoken about. Another program we have is called Op K9, and Op K9 is a psychiatric assistance dog program for veterans with PTSD. This is a program that we run, under funding from the Department of Veterans Affairs, and it allows us to support clients that have got post-traumatic stress disorder on the journey with their assistance dogs to get their independence back and help them to be able to enjoy life again.
The other program we also run is a program for autistic children, and that's a therapy-based program. So children with autism, school-age children, so primary and secondary, will come into our campus at Gillis Plains, and they'll have some therapy sessions both with an assistance dog and an occupational therapist.
How do service animals help improve the quality of life for people dealing with blindness or vision impairment?
Yeah, so for people with blindness, they are absolutely fundamental in terms of getting people out of home and getting people to navigate in their local community safely. So whether that's going to work, dropping the kids off at school, just going and having a coffee with a friend, all of those things, a guide dog will help the client get from A to B and help them navigate safely. One of the really massive things that a guide dog does for people, though, is it gives them confidence. So it gives them that extra sense of well-being and being able to take on take on the world and take on new challenges.
How can Fresh listeners support See Differently?
Look, there's many ways people can support See Differently. We've got the different programs that Sally and I have spoken about today. And in terms of donations and fundraising, people are welcome to visit our website, www.seedifferently.org.au.
Another massive way that people can help is, Sophie's one of our assistant dog instructors. We need a huge amount of volunteers to help us raise those puppies from the time they're born. So we have people who look after the puppies from the time they're 8 weeks old, and then the other volunteers who bring them into school when people like Sophie and her team are training the dogs as well. And they're people of all ages. They're people who have families and kids. They're people who are newly retired. We have some people who even live in aged care facilities looking after our puppies. So we're always looking for new volunteers who can help out with that process.
Sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Thank you so much for that, Sophie and Sally.
Wavelength.
Welcome back to Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. Right now, we are talking about gambling in South Australia.
Liz, take it away.
Wavelength explains on Fresh 92.7.
Are you hitting up the Cass this weekend or heading to the pokies? Around 2 in 5 people within Australia gamble weekly and lose twice as much as people in the United States. South Australia saw $4.24 million lost on sports betting between 2022 and 2023. Online betting has surged for young men within the past few years due to gambling advertisements being normalised on TV, with companies spending $310 million on these adverts across Australia. The Grattan Institute, a well-respected public policy institute in Australia, has recently highlighted 8 practical ways that Australia can reduce these numbers, including limiting the number of gambling locations accessible and banning gambling advertisements. By highlighting gambling losses, the Grattan Institute aims to identify a gambler's losses prior and act like a protective seatbelt. But couldn't the government just ban pokies? Well, it has a bigger impact than just that. Pokie machines are more accessible in Australia than a public toilet, postbox, or even an ATM. Victoria has 9 councils that do not have pokie machines. Some have blanket bans and policies with pub owners. However, the impacts of these restrictions on pub owners cannot be overlooked. Despite the aim of reducing gambling within these councils, pub owners are grappling with the loss of revenue from pokie machines and are finding it increasingly difficult to stay afloat. With the prevalence of gambling in Australia, it's crucial to ask, what is the government doing to help denormalise gambling? The Australian government wants to ban gambling advertisements on free-to-air TV. If this proposed ban were to go ahead, free-to-air network would lose around $204 million and $35 million for media online ads. In reality, this is only 10% of their revenue. There is a vast amount of pressure on the government to help Australians avoid the enduring damage that occurs with gambling. A 2023 parliamentary inquiry recommended enforcing a 3-year blanket ban. Still, some MPs believed it should be a straight-out ban, as the safety of Australians is more important than the commercial interests of media companies. Regardless of whether these proposed blanket bans are implemented, it's crucial to reflect on your own relationship with gambling. By doing so, you can contribute to a broader movement for positive change and advocate for more effective measures to address gambling issues.
Sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Thanks for that, Liz. And don't let the game play you. Stay in control. Gamble responsibly. We'll be right back. You're listening to Wavelength on Fresh.
Wavelength.
You're on Wavelength for your Monday night with Cass and Ella. Right now, it's my favourite time of the episode. It's heaps good news.
Can't get enough of this. What's going on, Emily?
I know there's gonna be
heaps good news on Wavelength.
To begin tonight, Australia's para-athletes will receive the same financial incentives as Olympians for winning medals at the Paris Games. Gold medalists will receive $20,000, silver medalists $15,000, and for bronze they will get $10,000. The para-athletes proudly represent Australia, and the performances they have shown will encourage many Australians of any age group to pick up a sport. Up next, a well-being dog named Hugo at Wallaroo Primary School is helping students feel happier and supported. Hugo, a 2-year-old border collie, spends 2 days a week at the school providing emotional support, attending classrooms and playing fetch in the yard. Before coming to the school, Hugo completed a year-long therapy dog training program which has prepared him in supporting the students. But there's more. Construction has started at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital where a new 24-bed mental health rehabilitation unit will be built. The goal of the new unit is to enhance the service offerings within the Western Adelaide suburbs. This unit will give patients envisions a specialised facility which will see a focus on longer stay mental health care, ample time for patients' rehabilitation and therapy programs. To continue, the Harndorf Immersed Festival will be on throughout the entirety of September, which brings a lot of creativity and fun to the town. There is a great lineup of events and activities to enjoy, and there is so much to do for the whole family. A few of the activities include a Potter wheel throwing come and try, a personalised dog collar workshop, a sweet pretzel decorating class, and even a fairy garden workshop as well. To finish off tonight, a winery in McLaren Vale called Grounded Crew will be opening a new cellar door this coming November. This comes after renovations to the McLaren Flat grounds. The new area will include a 120-person indoor cellar door, a function space, and a bigger lawn area. The owners of the winery are excited to turn their new space into something special for visitors, and they look forward to using the area for tastings and small plates.
Sparking the convos about Adelaide, you should be having Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
And that brings us to the end of the show tonight. Thank you so much for listening.
Make sure you're subscribed to the Wavelength podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. You can listen back to our old episodes right now, and tonight's episode will be up shortly.
That is officially it from us tonight.
Wavelength.